Hey everybody, it's Amy, and it is time for another edition of Got a Minute with Amy. And today's topic, students on the deed. Virginia resident or not? That's a good question. One of the agents came to me this week and said, Amy, my buyer wants to buy a townhouse and put their son on the deed. They asked me, how long will it be before he can qualify for in-state tuition if he's an owner on this property? It depends. And it depends on whether the student is still considered a dependent on the parent's tax returns. If the student is a dependent and the parents live in Maryland or out of state, then the student's primary residence is that where he is a dependent, and that would be in Maryland. So even if his name is on the deed here, he does not qualify as a state resident because he is a dependent of legal taxpayers in Maryland. Now, maybe you could have him not be a dependent, but you ought to tell your people to go talk to an accountant because there's tax consequences in that. There's also insurance consequences because now that you can keep a student or a kid on your parents' insurance until the kid is 26, that might have some bearing. So if the parents are talking about that, you probably need to tell them to talk to the accountant, but it is dependent upon where the student is considered a dependent or not a dependent. And then the other thing is if the student then is liberated and you're not going to have the student as a dependent on the parents' taxes, then how long does it take to become a state resident? And I went on the Virginia Tech website and read all that, and it's 1 year. So they have to have resided in Virginia, paid taxes, have a Virginia driver's license, registered to vote, register their car in Virginia to basically prove that they're a Virginia resident for 1 year before they would qualify to be considered the resident for tuition purposes. So I thought that was interesting. And then in the same day, another thing came up, which I thought is a little interesting side note on students on deeds. Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of times parents were putting students on deeds. And oftentimes you'll see these tax cards that say et al. And when it says that, that's Latin for and others, which means not only does this Herbert guy own the property, but there's and others. And when you see that, you better ask, well, how many people are on the deed? Because our old antiquated tax card thing really only has room for 2 names on this. And when there's 2, 3, 4 or more names, that and et al. Means you better ask who else needs to sign this listing agreement and contract. But in that case, back in the 80s and 90s, they were selling townhouses like Pheasant Run or condos at University Place with FHA loans. And the builders were marketing them to the parents saying, you can get in with really, really low down payment with an FHA loan by putting your student on the deed. And what you'll find is these old deeds from way back when that have the parents having 99% ownership and the kid having a 1% ownership. Hey, it worked really great back then to get in with low money down. What the builders didn't tell the parents is that kid then no longer qualifies for a first-time homebuyer program later on when they get married or graduate and go to buy a house because they're owner for 1% in the townhouse here, and it disqualified them. But that was a long time ago, piece of ancient history. So if you find one of these fossils, you can at least explain what happened back then. They don't allow that now. So I hope this was helpful. So it was a little bit about what to do or what to expect when someone asks you about putting their kid on a deed, trying to qualify for residency. Good luck. We'll see you later.